is there a truly reality out there that humans can really know? It's an age-old battle between realists and absolutists. God is not great, how religion ruins everything. And yet it's utterly and totally ridiculous. We need to live for something beyond ourselves. You know what? Many years ago, needing money to travel, I wanted to save up my money to go to Europe. I used to work at this hotels on Miami Beach, and I worked one summer at this place called the Newport Beach Hotel, and it's still there. Well, up the block from the hotel, there was this place that gave helicopter tours. And I remember one day, apparently the helicopter landed, and it landed at a bad angle and chopped some guy's head off. Now, I didn't see the incident, but for hours there were police cars and sirens and everything there, just, you know, what you would expect for something like that. Well, anyway, the next day I walked by the place. And what freaked me out was, all right, the tour office was closed. But outside of that, there was no indication that anything had ever happened. That just freaked me out. I mean, mothers were pushing their babies in strollers, kids were skateboarding by, people were laughing and walking by, cars were driving by. And then it just struck me. I mean, a person right here died yesterday. A whole universe, at least the universe in this person that existed in that person's mind, died with him. And the very next day, you walk by the very next day, and it was as if nothing ever happened. You know, something similar happened. I remember my wife and I, a while back, we were walking through Baltimore Harbor, and some woman had collapsed right there, you know, in the big crowd, and the ambulance came, and they were trying to resuscitate her and so on, and then they put her in the ambulance, and she drove away, and my wife and I watched. Then I didn't think she lived. Matter of fact, I'm pretty sure she was dead when they took her away. We walked away, and we came back half an hour later, and just people were walking by, strolling by again. You know, in this exact spot, this woman died, and it was as if it never happened. Life went on. And anyway, it just got me just thinking, you know, just you suddenly realize how fleeting life could be. And I remember not long after that helicopter beheading, it was still in my mind. I was in back of the hotel where I worked. And that my mind, I was thinking about that. And I remember I looked up at the stars. And I looked up at the stars, and I was thinking of the vastness of the universe and how big the universe is and how little I was in comparison. And if these stars existed long before I was here, they would exist long after I was here. And it just really got this sense of the utter meaninglessness of my life. I mean, what could it matter? I was just this person, lived here a little while, and I got this overwhelming sense of dread and depression because I felt so meaningless. And then right after that, though, the sense of calmness came through me. And I thought to myself, chill out, Cliff. Party hard. Don't take life too seriously. How could what's meaningless be serious anyway? So I found a great excuse to just kind of indulge my passions, a great excuse to live for the moment because, well, as I said, in the end, what did it mean? But anyway, over the years, that didn't work for me. I guess I wouldn't be sitting here right now if I did, because I guess in the end, there's something inside us. There's something inside us that calls us to live for something outside of us. Just to live just for yourself, to live only for yourself is so meaningless. It could be so meaningless. I remember during the Gulf War, I remember there was a story about some young kid. He was going nowhere, doing nothing with his life. The Gulf War started, and he enlisted. He enlisted in the Gulf War, and the parents said, why? And he said, well, I need to live for something bigger than myself. Now, whatever you think about the war or the goodness or the badness of it, whatever, I think that's indicative. You know, why of this idea to live for something beyond ourselves? Because why not? Because what are we? What are we but small packets of flesh carrying around our own fecal matter and not far away our own minds, which is what, a couple of pounds of carbon-based organic material closer in composition to a bucket of Kentucky Fried Chicken than to a computer. So what can such a small, self-contained packet of meat mean in contrast to the infinity that surrounds it? To live for yourself, to live for something no bigger than yourself, when there's so much ongoing around, would almost seem to be like being somewhere locked somewhere in solitary confinement, while all around you, you can hear life going on. And then you think worse, think about human consciousness. You know, think about what it is, this experience of oneself as oneself. There's the body, small in and of itself, and then within the body, and even smaller is the individual mind in which consciousness exists. This immediate sense of oneself is so contained, so limited, and it's so private, and so personable, and it's so inscrutably locked into the small clump of meat, our mind, which is what, in contrast to the vastness of the world around us. I mean, who can't get overwhelmed at times by the size and the vastness of the universe, the vastness of the cosmos, in contrast to us, ourselves, and this little thing inside us that we call self-consciousness. You know, for a while I used to have in the back of my computer the background, and I remember it was the first time I put it on, it was a shot of the Sombrero galaxy, one of these beautiful photographs that's taken from Hubble. And I'll never forget the first time I looked at that shot of that Sombrero galaxy, I almost burst into tears. I mean, the astonishing beauty of it, the grandeur, the size, the scope. And it just seemed almost unfair to be confronted with a reality that I can't grasp, a reality that's dangled before us, teasing us, mocking our own size, our own triviality, our own ignorance. Who can begin to fathom the knowledge? Who can begin to fathom the power, the reasoning, all that went into creating just the Sombrero galaxy, just one galaxy out of billions and billions. And here we are, just these tiny specks, these tiny clumps of meat, you know, in this vast, vast cosmos, this vast infinity that's all around us. It's almost like putting a starving prisoner on a guillotine while someone within his sight scarfs down a nice 6-course meal right before the blade drops. So what's the answer? What's the answer? Do we exist here, these little clumps of meat, this little bit of consciousness? We're here for a little while, living, trying to do a little bit of good or whatever, and then we're gone amid all this vast eternity, which has nothing to do with us and which is totally inaccessible to us. How do we respond to that? The only answer I can think of is that if there really is a God who loves us, who promises us something beyond what this human life in and of itself offers. I mean, get right down to it. If you get right down to it, we're teeny packets of dying flesh existing in specks of space and trinkets of time, while a vast infinity hurls all these cosmos around us. There's got to be more. And in my opinion, what could be more important than trying to find out just what that more really is?